Mr. Guest, as you alluded to before, House Republicans have in fact passed legislation to directly impact and affect and improve the border in the form of H.R. 2 and, frankly, other measures. Is that correct?
Correct. H.R. 2, and if you look at the appropriations process, we've appropriated more money than has been requested by the President to try to secure the border, both last year and the bills that have passed out of appropriations so far this year. And we've also sought to hold Secretary Mayorkas accountable by seeking to impeach him, and actually the House did impeach him before he was acquitted without trial in the Senate. And
significantly, with respect to the H.R. 2 legislation, we passed policy measures in that bill to address the enormous deficiencies and, frankly, outright willful blindness and refusal to secure the border by the President of the United States, by the Secretary of Homeland Security, and, yes, by the Vice President of the United States, whom the President tasked with dealing with, at some description, significant aspects of the border security crisis in this country. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
With respect to the Vice President, I would submit for the record a CNN article dated, I think, June of 2021, in which CNN writes, Vice President Kamala Harris endured a rocky first foreign trip since taking office, with sources telling CNN her two-day swing through Mexico and Guatemala left some administration officials perplexed about what they perceive as her bumpy answers to questions about whether she will go to the U.S.-Mexico border. Several sources say there was real hope inside the White House that Harris's first trip abroad would be a success, and worried that what looked like ill-prepared answers to the inevitable question would overshadow it. And then it goes on to talk about her role and the extent to which it was a failure. So I'd submit that for the record. But what I would note is this effort to bend over backwards to claim that the President didn't task her specifically with the title border czar, something we have not otherwise claimed. The fact is, it became colloquially known as that. So fine, call it whatever you want to. The President of the United States, a reasonably important position, notwithstanding the fact that the President has been missing for 6 days, the President of the United States of America went to the Vice President of the United States of America and said, I want you, Kamala Harris, to take into your daily duties as Vice President a significant role in dealing with the border crisis. Is that true?
That is correct. During her being tasked with that, I want to make sure that we point out again that she made one single visit during the last 3 years to the United States-Mexico border, and she has not spoken with the current chief of the Border Patrol or the former chief of the Border Patrol. And so for her to be able to try to solve the root causes of immigration without talking to the people who were on the front lines dealing with this every day, I think is ludicrous for anyone to be able to make the argument that she has succeeded in her mission.
And exploring that a little further, that stop was in El Paso, Texas, correct?
That is correct.
El Paso, Texas has hardly been the hot spot for the bulk of the traffic that has been coming through primarily. It has had some hotspot moments, particularly of late, but it was not the driving force, which we were seeing at one point during the RGV in the Rio Grande Valley, at one point where we were seeing significantly in Laredo and Del Rio and other spots, at Eagle Pass notably. But the Vice President, in taking on this task, even if you accept that she was supposed to engage with the Northern Triangle, with Central America, Mexico, and deal with our engagement with our neighbors to the south, that you would think that the Vice President would do something other than, and I want to go back to El Paso, stop in El Paso, literally stop, go do a conference at a fence, by way of fence that Democrats supported and voted for back in the day when that fence was built. It was a Democrat that helped build that fence. That she went and took a photo op in front of the fence to go to a fundraiser in L.A. That's where she was headed. She pit stopped in El Paso. Never went to Laredo, never went to Del Rio, never went to the RGV, never went and sat down. Jason Owen's a great guy. The head of Border Patrol, great guy. I know him. He's a friend. Raul Ortiz did a great job. He's a Border Patrol chief. She hasn't spoken to them. Can you possibly focus on the root causes of the border crisis that has resulted in the death of Americans, the destruction of property, damage to our country, the endangerment of our people, if you don't talk to the people managing the border. Is that possible? Is that remotely possible? Does the gentleman think that's possible?
No, it is not, and the only reason she went to El Paso was because she was called out on national television
Correct.
by NBC, asking her, had she been to the border, when she intended to visit the border, and I think you're right when you talk about the fact that her border should be viewed only as a photo op. They knew she was coming, she touched down, she went to the border, she had a photo, and then she immediately got on a plane and left, and she really did no due diligence while she was there trying to get to the root causes of what we're seeing that has caused the immigration problem, which I allege is the inaction of this administration. And them rolling back successful Trump-era policies, which she has been a part of.
Is the gentleman aware in that same discussion at CNN that refers to the interview that the vice president had with Lester Holt, in which Mr. Holt asked, at some point, are you going to the border? And she said, at some point, we're going to go to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border. Holt responded, you haven't been to the border. Well, I haven't been to Europe, and I don't understand the point that you're making, Harris said with a laugh. She added, I'm not discounting the importance of the border. Isn't the fact of the matter, the Vice President of the United States, whom the President of the United States gave additional authority and task to go manage the border, had no intention of dealing with the border, that all of this was designed to deflect from the reality that they had a planned policy to literally allow people to be released into the United States. They purposely released people into the United States, abusing the laws, abusing parole. And very specifically, I want to be very specific about this. Laken Riley was killed by someone who was paroled into the United States by the Biden-Harris administration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the policies, and there were others.
Multiple others. This administration, in which the Vice President of the United States was given additional powers and responsibilities with respect to managing and dealing with the border, in which the Secretary of Homeland Security, who's been appropriately impeached for his failure to secure the border of the United States, who should resign in disgrace today on the back of that impeachment, but also on the absolute failure of the Secret Service, the Vice President of the United States laughed off even physically going to the border and has refused to meet with Border Patrol, the head of Border Patrol, and Americans are dead directly as a consequence of the policy choices that were in direct conflict with the laws of the United States. And that is why we, as Republicans, having passed legislation to fix and secure the border, sent it to the Senate, have Senate Democrats laugh it off, ignore it, try to pass another bill, couldn't even pass it, by the way, couldn't even pass it, that would not only not have secured the border, would have actually made it worse, doubling down on the policies of this administration to release people into the United States, knowing full well that criminals were being released into the United States so that Texans would get killed, so that Laken Riley would get killed in Georgia, so that Rachel Morin would get killed right up the road from right here where we sit in the Capitol building here in Maryland. And by the way, was the second woman to get killed in that very county here in Maryland as a direct result of people out in the United States. The purpose of this resolution is to make clear to the American people that not just the president, not just the impeached, disgraced Secretary of Homeland Security, but the Vice President of the United States, given specific authority to deal with the border, should be held accountable for her failure and what's that meant for the American people. I appreciate you all bringing that forward. I yield back to the chairman.
Chair, thanks.